nagpagawas mamug statement kagahapon about the deaths of sa pagkamatay ni Chad Buok, Jurain Nguho, Elgin Balonga. Is it Balonga or Balonga? Balonga.
It's Balonga po.
Balonga. And two others who are, according to your press statement, are served as drivers. Let's start with Meg. Meg, can you tell us something about Chad Buok, Jurain, and Elgin?
Well, for Chad Buok po, he was a graduate from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and he has a cum laude degree in computer science and came from a quite comfortable middle class background. So when actually asked why he would take why he took the path of being a volunteer teacher, Chad was actually he took inspiration during the Manilakbayan, or we call Lakbayan ng mga nasundong Minoria, in around 2015, where he met and talked to a lot of the Lumads, no, while in Manila at the time. And he's actually very well known to, when asked about his career, no, he would be a lot of people would talk about how Chad really um, turned down, a future with a career with a prolific career and a life of comfort, no? And he actually chose to he go to Mindanao, no, para magtudlo yun, no, para sa mga lumad schools that are really far, no, from the reaches of government services and basic social services such as education, health, no, and protection even. So he Chad is actually was actually part. It's very hard to talk about him in past tense. No, he was part of the Blockbit School 7, who was arrested in the raid, that happened in February 2021 here in the University of San Carlos. And he, together with six other students, leaders, kasama ni that's Benz, were actually charged with allegations of human trafficking and abduction. No? But of course, these cases were dropped, no? And obviously the truth prevailed. Na all the accusations were falsehoods, no, and had no bearing of truth. But even despite the cases being dropped, Chad still faced death threats, no, and was continually being hunted by the state forces themselves, no, even if his cases were dropped. There were even during his time here in Cebu, after the cases had been dismissed, no, we heard reports of ununiformed or certain people, no, looking down for Chad in his sanctuary, asking, where is Chad? We're just waiting na he will be jailed again. And even years prior, no, during his time in Mindanao, in Caraga, and the Lumad schools, Chad received numerous death threats, no, even from the military themselves. There was even one, and Chad was very open about this. He was very vocal about this. To speak, I'll speak it in December. Nagid to instance nga kanang nagsigi og post si Chad og kanang mga screenshots sa iyang mga conversation, because there was one military personnel, and I can provide the pictures of this conversation because Chad posted it on his public account in Facebook, na ni chat yun nga kanang huwaton lang namo. Basically, it was in the lines of huwaton lang nako nga mupuput ka og pusil nga magkakita ta kay ako mo pusil nimo. So it was a death threat itself, no, and it was very threatening to Chad. He was only one of the many Luma teachers who had fallen victim, no, to the violence and the human rights violations brought about by the rampant militarization in Mindanao, and especially in the military occupation in Lumad schools, no, which in itself is a violation of international humanitarian law. And Chad is actually one of the petitioners against the anti-terror law, being a being accused of being red tag himself. So usagid siya sa mga um naagay lived experiences of being red tagged and terrorized by the state forces themselves. For teacher Jure, he is gamay siya nga tao, no, pero kanang he's someone nga kanang puno gid kaayo og life, no. He's like gamay ra nga ni teacher Jorain kay makita gid nimo nga kanang malipay gid ang mga estudyante niya, no. Siya usahay mo tabang og kanang mo assist og gitara sa iyang mga students whenever they sing their songs or have kanang cultural nights, no, in order these are part of the activities of the Lumad schools in order to make sure that the students are still connected with their culture, no, that shouldn't be separate from their education. Okay, mo man gid na ang usa sa specialties sa Lumad schools, and what sets it so differently and most importantly from our regular schools, no, it's that kanang Lumad schools are rooted in their culture, in the preservation of their culture, of their ancestral lands, and their cultural identity. And actually, immediately after graduating, ni volunteer gid dayon sa teacher Jerain para mo tudlo pod, no, sa mga lumad. And after a year, he decided to become a volunteer teacher as well for the Bakwit School in Manila in 2018, and then again in Cebu in 2019 until 2021. Actually, during katong grade daw nga nahitabo pag February 2021, teacher during ato nag-help pa gani og facilitate sa pagpauli na hinay-hinay sa mga students balik sa ilahang communities, considering that was part of the SOS Bakwit School programs, especially faced with the pandemic, to help facilitate the travel back home of the students and of the teachers. So, and then we also have the recent identification of Elgin Balonga. I think, and Dato Benito has experiences to share of her as well, no? Who is known to be a community health worker and had conducted many medical missions in remote areas in Mindanao, such as in Talaingod and in Kapalong, Davao. And she actually facilitated medical students as well, no, in for their internship, no, for in UCCP Haran in conducting a medical checkups rin for the families in Haran, considering that it's one of the biggest Bakwit schools of the three. So ayun po. She was very active really when it comes to advocating for the Lumads, not only for their education but as well as for their health and for their well-being.